Hello, welcome to Chapter 4, Section 3, Completing the Square. So we're going to jump ahead so that we can write our equations in from standard form to vertex form. That way, when we're trying to find our vertex and our axis of symmetry, it's in the form that we want it to be in, and we don't have to use that equation that we found in class. So, completing the square is the process of making a perfect trinomial. If you have a perfect trinomial, you can factor more easily. That's putting it into vertex form. Okay, and if you have x squared plus bx, all you have to do to complete the square is add b over 2 squared. Okay, that's right here. So, once you do that, this is the factored form. And it's really not that hard if you can remember the process. So, for example, if we want to find the c to complete the perfect square trinomial, we need to take b, divide it by 2, and square it. So our b is the second term, right? So that 40. B over 2 is 20. And b over 2 squared is 400. So whenever you write this, the c is going to equal 400. That's that part of the answer. Now we want to actually factor it, which means that we're going to write x squared plus 40x plus our c, which was 400, equal to what it says up there. So the x plus b over 2 squared. So we have x, our b over 2 we found was 20, and it's that squared. And I got that b over 2 right there. So we just stick it in there exactly where it goes. So let's actually find the equation and put it into vertex form in example 2. We're going to do the exact same thing, but there's a small difference because now we actually have an equation. And remember that what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So if you're adding 81, or if you're adding 400 to one side, you have to add it to the other now. And first we need to find our, well, let's set it up. We have f of x plus something, right? Because we're going to add it to both sides, equals x squared minus 18x. This is what we are completing the square with. So we're going to have a plus something and then a plus 5. So we need to find out what goes in that blank. Well, here in this problem, we have that b equals negative 18. Well, if b equals negative 18, then b over 2 equals negative 18 over 2, which is negative 9. Then we have to find b over 2 squared. Well, b over 2 is negative 9, so we square that to get 81. So that's what's going in our blank. In both blanks, we're going to put the 81. Alright, so we have that f of x plus 81 equals this factored. And remember that this factored is the x plus b over 2. Well, our b over 2 is negative 9. So we actually want to get rid of that plus and put a negative 9 squared plus 5. But we're not done yet. We have to do one more thing and make sure that f of x is by itself on the left side, so we're going to subtract 81. So f of x equals x minus 9 squared minus 76. Okay, then the instructions ask us to find the vertex. So the vertex, remember, is h comma k. And h is inside, so we do the inverse. So it's 9 comma negative 76. Alright, let's do that again. So we're going to set it up. Every time you set it up, f of x plus something equals, parentheses, x squared minus 22x plus something. And then the plus 16 was at the end. So we need to find our b, and find our b over 2, and find our b over 2 squared. Well, b is the second number. That was a negative 22. Well, if b is negative 22, then b over 2 is negative 22 over 2 which is negative 11. Which means that b over 2 squared is negative 11 squared, which is 121. So that's what we're putting into our blanks. We have a 121 here and a 121 here. Then we're going to factor. So we leave the left-hand side alone, f of x plus 121. And then we have the x plus b over 2. Well, our b over 2 this time was negative 11. So we put negative 11 squared plus 16. Well, before we can finish, we have to make sure that that 121 is subtracted from both sides to get it out of the left-hand side. So minus 121 and f of x equals x minus 11 squared minus 105. So again, to find our vertex, we have hk, and inside we do the inverse, so that's a positive 11, negative 105. Here's your last example, and this time it's a little bit more complicated. So we have a 2 out front. So we're still going to set it up, but our a has to be 1. Our a must be 1. If it's not 1, we need to make it a 1. Well, how would you turn a 2 into a 1? You're going to divide by 2. So we need to divide this by 2, and that's what we're going to put in our parentheses. For example, we have f of x, and we're setting this up, so we have plus a blank. Now we're going to pull the 2 out. So we have 2 times x squared, right? Because when you divide 2 by 2, you get 1. When you divide negative 20 by 2, you get negative 10. So you have negative 10x plus something plus 60. So we took the 2 out of the 2x squared and out of the negative 20x, and we're adding a blank. Now we need to find out what our b is. Well, here our b, it's the second number, and it's the second number of the changed one. So we have negative 10. Well, if b is negative 10, then b over 2 is negative 10 over 2, which is negative 5. Well, if b over 2 is negative 5, then b over 2 squared is negative 5 squared, which is 25. And that's what's going in our blank. So we're putting this 25 here. Now, because we have 2 times 25, that's actually going inside. 2 times 25 is 50. Okay, so we're putting 50 outside. That's what we have to do because that's actually adding the same thing to one side as we are to the other. So we have f of x plus 50 equals 2 times whatever's inside factored. Well, our b over 2 is negative 5, so we have x minus 5 squared plus our 60. That was already there. We still need to solve for f of x, so we're going to subtract 50. And when we do, we have f of x equals 2 times x minus 5 squared minus 10. To find the vertex now, we do the exact same thing as we did before. It is hk. H is inside, so we do the inverse, and we have 5, negative 10. And that is all. Have a great day.